We're going to call this series that we're doing on George Grant, who's considered one of the most important public intellectuals in Canada in the latter half of the 20th century. The owl and JADIS. The owl, symbolically in philosophy, is the symbol of wisdom, a symbol of insight, the one who sees beyond the phenomena. And JADIS comes from Chronicles of Narnia, in which she's constantly whipping people along faster, faster, faster. And one of the first films done in George Grant was called The Owl and the Dynamo, and in many ways JADIS embodies that dynamo of Western civilization. And so we're going to do 8 series of about 5 minutes each, and the first one we're going to look at is Grant and the Empire, the New Romans in Washington. After World War II, it became very, very apparent that the United States was emerging as the great empire, probably greater than Rome, probably greater than any empire in human history. England had been devastated by World War II, as had Russia, Japan, and many of the other countries in Europe. And Canada, being very much on the northern border of the United States, it emerged at a period of time as the British Empire waned, the American Empire waxed. And increasingly so, the United States moved from an isolationist position to increasingly a cosmopolitan and a very aggressive position in the world. This caused problems for Canadians. And Canadians have a history of being, to some degree, moving from being the colony of one empire, the British, and after World War II, as the American Empire ascended, potentially being a colony of another. Now, George Grant was very concerned in his great book. This is the 50th anniversary of the publication of Lament for a Nation. He was lamenting the fact that Canada, at a political, at an economic, at a cultural level, was just trading one empire for another. And he saw the United States as the New Romans, and there were a variety of books that had come out in the 1960s on the New Romans. And the variety of CIA operations that were taking place from the United States after World War II very much reflected that increasing role of the world gendarmerie in the Cold War and thereafter that the United States was playing. Grant took the position that to be an empire, and particularly for people of faith, to uncritically bow before an empire was highly problematic. And when you had a collision of the church and state, and when the church ended up going on bended knee, particularly to military powers, it was bowing to Mars or to the god of war, and rather than God being the source of security, God being the source of future direction and justice and peacemaking, in fact, Mars was the one who set the direction for the church and for the state, and then what you have is the capitulation, essentially, of the church to the state. This, in fact, was just a form of Neo-Constantinianism, as it came to be defined in the West, or Caesaropapism within the Orthodox tradition. So Grant was attempting to articulate a role for the church that was prophetic, rather than just pietist, retreating public prey, or, on the other hand, capitulating to power. And this middle way of a prophetic tradition in which the church finds its way beyond retreating from the fray into pietism or serving power, i.e. imperial power, this was the tricky dilemma. It's Lament for a Nation, in some ways, is lamenting the passing away of Canada in terms of a prophetic role in terms of the United States, lamenting the passing away of the church as an ability to be a prophetic voice in post-World War II, and also lamenting the passing away of a world view in which an old Tory perspective animated, defined, and illuminated what it meant to be engaged at an economic, an educational, a cultural, and political level. And so when we think then of Grant and empire, for him, the big issue, where was it situated? There's the older sort of saying in Christianity of Tertullian, what's Athens to do with Jerusalem? If we fast forward that, we may ask, what has Canterbury, or what does Constantinople, or what does Rome have to do with Washington? And so that older saying, in being fast forward the big symbols or portals of meaning or ultimate meaning, or how people make make sense of ultimate issues in a penultimate world, it hinges on the role of Washington, because Washington became the dominant center in the world. And what was then the role of Canada vis-a-vis Washington? What was the role of Athenian or philosophic thinking and prophetic thinking, Jerusalem, in regards to this? And so this first overview here, just briefly touching down on the political, economic, military element of empire, the role of the church within that, and then how do we reclaim a contemplative prophetic role of which Grant attempted to embody and articulate.